Sigma have been doing some fantastic things over the last few years with their Art series, a line of lenses which prioritise image quality but at a decent budget. And they're some of our best-selling third-party lenses for pretty much every camera platform out there. But because they're such high quality optically, with fast apertures, they're quite large and heavy as a result, which is exactly why Sigma have their contemporary lineup of lenses. This lineup prioritised fitting as much quality as possible into a small and portable package, and up until recently has mainly focused on zoom lenses and super 35mm lenses. Now though, they have these, their I series. These are a new line of full-frame, premium, compact primes in either E-mount or L-mount. There's a 24mm f3.5, a 35mm f2, 45mm f2.8, and 65mm f2. The 45 has been around for a few years as it was launched alongside the Sigma FP camera, but the other lenses are new and make this into a much more complete lineup. And as you can see, they are tiny, much smaller and more compact and portable than their Art lenses, and an ideal pair for mirrorless cameras like the A7S Mark III when you want to keep the setup nice and small. The heaviest lens of the lot is the 65mm, but even this is only 405 grams. The 45 and the 24 are both 230 grams. And these are so small and easy to have in your camera bag for whenever you may need them. Plus, because they're actually pretty affordably priced, I expect these will be a popular choice for customers who have invested in one of these new Sony cameras with fantastic autofocus performance, but whose glass has historically mainly been manual focus only. Having just one or two of these in your camera bag isn't going to break the bank or take up too much space, and it will mean that you can just use them whenever you need to take full advantage of that autofocus when you're in a situation that calls for it, like an interview or a piece to camera, for example. If you do want to use manual focus on these though, they do actually have quite a nice focus mechanism. It's fly-by-wire, just like most lenses with autofocus, but it's a really nice level of manual focus dampening. It feels just as nice to focus with as their Art lenses do, and most importantly, doesn't feel twitchy or temperamental to manually focus. It's easy to hit your focus points without overshooting and responds quite predictably. In fact, you could probably fool people into thinking it's just a linear focus mechanism, just without hard stops on either end. There's also an iris ring on the lens itself. Now, this isn't a true mechanical iris, of course, it's a wheel which controls the electronic iris inside. And it does click, but it adjusts the iris smoothly despite that. And there's an A setting for when you want the camera to control the iris instead. Another nice physical touch is these magnetic lens caps. You only get these on the newer 3 lenses, so not the 45mm, but they're a nice touch. They just snap on effortlessly, and they make this carabiner holder for them as well, so that you can just clip them onto your belt or camera bag to avoid losing the lens cap when you're using it. They don't work great though with actual lens hoods, that's the only problem. You do though get a normal lens cap in the box if you don't want to use these fancy magnetic ones. But because of these new Sony cameras, what people most want to know about lenses like these now is the autofocus performance. The concern with using third-party lenses has always historically been that you may be compromising the autofocus performance compared to using native lenses. So we've set up this simple interview style shot and tried to match the framing between each lens in the lineup. Now this obviously makes more sense on some lenses than others. This 24mm interview shot, for example, is quite a strange one. But it does give us an idea of how well the lenses are going to track focus when set to eye and face tracking on the A7S Mark III, which is perhaps one of the most common situations. And as you can see, they do a good job. The focus is smooth, responsive, and very natural. You do see some stepping in the background when you look at the bokeh of those fairy lights, but to be honest, you do see that on most lenses. If you just pay attention to the face, you would never notice the focus changing. There's no twitching or anything like that, it just locks onto the face and stays there. This is certainly better focus pulling than I can do myself manually in situations like this. And importantly, the lenses look quite consistent in performance across the range. Let's now look at it against other brands of lenses for E-mount. We're using the A7S Mark III again here and have the Sony 24-70mm f2.8 zoom lens as a benchmark from Sony themselves, and then the fantastic 40mm Batis from Zeiss, which is a fair bit more expensive than these Sigma lenses, but another popular choice. With simple touch tracking, the Sony 24-70 looks very smooth, with actually an impressive lack of breathing. The Zeiss lens is just as quick as the Sony, but with quite a bit more breathing actually, and the Sigma does a great job of keeping up with the more expensive lenses. It's just as responsive here, with no twitching or anything like that. There's some breathing, but it's not as much as on the Batis. Considering that this is a significantly more affordable lens than the others, and that it's also the 45mm, so it's the oldest lens from this new lineup from Sigma, this is quite impressive and just what I was hoping to see. Let's now swap over to an interview style setup for a more real world example using face and eye tracking. The Sony works perfectly, tracking smoothly and accurately. There is still though that slight stepping on these fairy lights in the background which we saw earlier on the Sigma lenses. So it's interesting that the Sony lens is doing that too, not just the Sigma ones. It's possible that we would be able to minimize that by tweaking the autofocus settings a bit. This is now the Zeiss, which is also doing very well. And what's interesting in this shot is because it's mainly white walls and skin tones, it really clearly shows off each lens's natural color characteristics. You can see that cooler, crisper look that Zeiss is famous for very clearly here, and I have to say I really like it. It makes details like Dan's hair and beard really pop out as well. I love the look from these Batis lenses. The Sigma, on the other hand, has a much warmer and slightly classic feel to it overall, while still being very sharp and detailed. And the autofocus seems to be just as good as on the others to me. It holds up really well, despite being so much smaller and being half the price of the other lenses. Overall, I think these lenses are just fantastic value for money. And if you need a small, lightweight option, they are definitely worth considering. Are they as good quality as Sigma's Art range or Sony's G Master Primes or even Zeiss Batis ones? No, they aren't, but they aren't far off. Plus, they're much smaller, much more affordable, and the autofocus performance seems just as good. I, for one, am very pleased to see Sigma expanding their contemporary line. I think having these two lines of lenses makes perfect sense. The Art range prioritizing image quality, and then the contemporary range prioritizing portability. Sigma are really growing this contemporary lineup as well at the moment, especially with full frame ones like these and their new 28-70mm f2.8, which we're also going to be taking a look at soon. But if you're looking for a small, affordable primes for your E-mount or L-mount cameras, I think these I-series ones could be some of the best options out there for you to buy. If you want to buy them, of course, just head over to provi.co.uk. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.